Welcome in, everybody, to a Football Friday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. I'm your host, Zander Krause. That's my co-host, Johnny Mac, John McMullen, the #1 Eagles beat reporter in town. Johnny Mac, a good Friday to you, sir. How you doing on this Football Friday morning?
Doing well. We got a little bit of personnel news, which is a little bit rare for this time of year. Terrace Marshall, another wide receiver, as the number 12, I believe, on the Temu shopping cart, comes into Philadelphia. Similar mindset. Liked him back in the 2021 draft. Pretty high pick, didn't live up to his potential in Carolina. Bring him in, see what he can do. And they should, they're really deep up top on the depth chart, but they need some help behind that, especially outside the numbers. You see it when a couple games about AJ Brown missed. But that was the Devontae Smith draft. So, I think he would have been relevant if the Eagles weren't able to get to Devontae Smith early. They liked him, and he probably would have been in the mix for them but they had an early. That was also the Landon Dickerson draft, so that was a little bit too early. And then you're talking the third round, which is Milton Williams. Great draft for the Eagles, by the way. And then that would have been too late. So, in no man's land from their perspective, and certainly after they got Devontae, as I mentioned, they weren't going wide receiver again. So, but they liked the player back then, and but it's 2025. They do this a lot.
What's the plan with Terrace Marshall? Just tell everybody. I'll tell everybody about him a little bit. He was a 59th overall pick in 2021. Played college ball at LSU. Hasn't been uber productive. His best season was 28 receptions for 490 yards. But John, why is he in Philly? Is this the move on from Dotson? Is this the?
Well, that was a little bit of fear of that, but they wouldn't be saving much money because
That's
remember,
what I mean. I feel like Dotson was already so cheap. There's no really gain there. So
well,
I was thinking more, John. Anais Smith didn't work out great. Johnny Wilson didn't work out great, or maybe Brian Pumper knows all. And Johnny Wilson's about to come a tight end, and they brought in Terrace Marshall for another body at wide receiver.
Well, you need bodies at wide receiver, and they need outside bodies, outside the number bodies, because as I mentioned with AJ Brown, when he is injured, they really have no replacement, at least from a frame perspective, and somebody who could, just play the position. Marshall can do that to a better degree than what they had. He's much faster than Johnny Wilson, who's got the size, but. So from that standpoint, it makes some sense from a trades. Anais Smith, different player, similar to defensive tackle, nose tackle. I mean, he's not an outside receiver anyway. He's more of a slot guy, jet sweep guy, manufactured touch guy. The lone concern, but but Dodson was a first round pick, so he's a 16th overall pick, and he's got his 5th-year option. They'll obviously decline that. But I mentioned, he's the best wide receiver 3 of the Nick Sirianni era, and I hope they're not penny pitching just because he's not going to be here next year.
Yeah.
And they say, well, let's trade him, let's get something, and that type of thing, and save a couple $100,000 because that's all you're going to be saving. But if that is the thought process, I don't like it. But I don't know if that's the thought process. But I have to throw that out there,
right?
Because I don't, this guy hasn't. I think and I've been. You didn't get to see a lot of volume, but I thought when the ball came Jahan Dotson's way, he made some plays, and I think that's been
late in the year too.
And that's been that's been a problem in the past for this team. Not that the third receiver is going to get much volume. We know that's not going to happen. But yeah, I thought he did a good job, and I think he's a good player. And it's not. Yeah, all right. There's turnover every year. He's probably not going to be here in 2026. So what? Get the year out of him,
right?
and try your best. I don't like it from the standpoint of, if that's the sentiment. Again, I'm not saying it is, but if that is the sentiment, I don't like it at all. Trying to, get something for him. I get that perspective, but what are you going to get for him?
Yeah, I don't think it's likely. I'm not saying you're wrong, John. I just don't think that's likely that they're trying to move on from Dotson. Maybe. I mean, I think it's plausible, but I don't think that's why they brought in Terrace Marshall.
Well, I
Maybe I'm
kind of get,
wrong, but
I kind of get a Tanner McKee, Kenny Pickett feel here. You save a couple bucks with a former first round pick. This would be lesser because, again, it's not a quarterback, but I don't like the players they have behind, the younger players. And that's why you bring in Marshall. I think they signified that they don't believe they had anybody to replace him currently. But if you bring in Marshall, who's a veteran, has had some success, you liked him, you think maybe there's some upside. I'm not saying that's not. I'm just throwing it out there.
yeah, right. You're just giving people the potential thing
Yeah.
of what exists here. Yeah, no, I agree. I'm just giving you my opinion on it. I don't think that's what's happened. It's possible, but I don't think that's what happened. More feels to me like another camp body Timu signing Johnny Mack. And, hey, here's where I think you might be right. If he outperforms Dotson in camp or something, can you see an August trade or something like that with Jahan Dotson? I could potentially see that. I think we traded for Jahan last year in August, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know. Maybe that's an option
Yeah,
here.
they traded for him in August. Danny Gray, I mean, is a guy on the practice squad. I think he should be, give him a shot. I think he's their best receiver behind the big three, if you want to include Dotson. And Danny Gray was a third-round pick in 2022, one of those 49ers third-round picks they always seem to bring in. And he's got a lot of physical gifts, and everybody would rave about him on the practice squad. He would, sort of be the scout team player that would replicate the opposing team's best wide receiver every week. And, he runs a 4.33 coming out. I mean, give Danny Gray a shot. Terrace Marshall.
Yeah.
I'm starting to get annoyed with these Timu signings.
I can tell. I can sense it on you, Johnny Mack.
But,
the annoyance.
You're really penny pinching if you're going to move on from Jahan Dotson a year early just to save a couple $100,000. So I hope that's not the case. But
yeah. I don't think so either. But like I said to you guys, 28 receptions for 490 in 2022 is his best season. So I don't know what kind of upside you're looking for. I mean, obviously you have, looks like, you have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. I don't think you need crazy upside, but maybe he could be a replacement for Jahan Dotson. We will see what happens with the greatness of Terrace Marshall. But, John, you mentioned it. We are up to, 12 Timu signs on the year?
Yeah, 12. 12, I believe, is the number. I'll double check. And this one's kind of late, so kind of came out of nowhere. But, when AJ was down, Dotson, that's the one thing. Dotson's not really, he's probably 5'10", 5'11", not really equipped to be that big outside the numbers guy. And Marshall is from a size perspective. But, and I'm going in alphabetical. No, it's not alphabetical order, but I'll just run them down. Harrison Bryant, our guy, superstar. A.J. Dillon, Josh Uche. Xander's a big Josh Uche guy. Charlie Hewlett, I joked. I back when it was at like 10, I ranked them. Who's the most likely to contribute? Charlie Hewlett's number one. He's got to be number one. He's the only guy guaranteed a job. He's going to be your long snapper. So he's going to contribute. Adoree Jackson, Patrick Johnson's back, Avery Williams, Kylan Granson, Azeez Ojulari, Kendall Lamb, Matt Pryor, and now Terrace Marshall Jr. Now, if you want to go by contract, we know everybody but Patrick Johnson, who's minimum. You can pencil that in.
Yeah.
And Marshall, who just signed. And obviously, Azeez got the most money. He got the Zach Bond contract. Not quite as, He did the exact same Zach Bond contract, and that's where the comparison should end. 1 year up to $3.5 million. A lot of incentives in there. Number 2 on the list is your guy Josh Uche, which tells you edge rushers. And number 3, that is a tie between Adoree Jackson, which makes sense, and Kylen Granson.
Whoa!
So Kylen Granson who's our Harrison Bryant guy?
JD3, where are you?
Kylen Granson got $1.75 million. Poor Harrison Bryant only got 1.2.
Oh man, that's a $500,000 difference nearly. Kylen Granson just usurped your boy. Sorry, JD3. We'll see what happens.
That's not enough money to usurp him, but
No,
it does give you a little bit of an.
I'm just saying. I mean, when you have small numbers, Johnny Mac, that's still 30% more, whatever the heck it would turn out to be. But all right, we'll see what happens. How many of these Temu signings, John, are going to make the team in your estimation right now? It's hard to say, probably pre-draft.
Get me after the draft on that. The only ones who are guaranteed to make the team, in my estimation, are Charlie Hewlett, as I just mentioned,
because he's a long snapper, right?
Adoree Jackson, and I would then put. Those are the only guarantees. I would put a bunch of guys at like 90%, but those are the only 2 I'm going to guarantee, barring injury, of course.
I think Adoree Jackson has a good chance to be the starter.
So do I.
Yeah.
Unless they add a corner in the draft, which they've been looking at a lot of corners. There's a lot of guys, like I would put Ojulari at like 90%. I would put A.J. Dillon, if he's healthy, at like 90%, but that's why. I don't know if he's healthy. I'd put him up there pretty high. The problem with Granson and Bryant, if you draft a tight end, and I think they're going to draft a tight end over the first 2 days, if you draft a tight end that high, you're probably not keeping both. So they're fighting against each other.
Right.
That's why you can't put a high number on. One of them will make the team, but can't guarantee. Avery Williams, I put at 90% as the kick returner, punt returner.
I actually like that signing. I just thought he was a little bit of a better Britton Covey. I wasn't a Britton Covey guy. I don't know what it was. Might have just been an eye test thing for me. I wasn't a Britton Covey guy.
Well, Britton's hurt now, so it's different. But he was the best punt returner football year too. Avery Williams never done that.
No, I know.
But he's got more versatility, Avery Williams. He can play. Britton wasn't a kick returner. Avery can be your kick returner and punt returner and play on special teams coverage. Covey was very, he's a punt returner and a slot receiver. So, he's much more versatile. So you can save some roster spots if you want to. I don't know if the Eagles want to. Typically, they haven't wanted. Like, I would let him return all kicks and punts. They generally haven't done that. We'll see if they will. And then Nick brought up his manufactured touch ability, and I'm like, come on, dude. We do this every year. They're not using manufactured touch players on a relevant basis. And they're not the only ones. I hate it on every NFL team except for Kyle Shanahan. You got to be, and I say it all the time, and you got to be very disciplined as a coach. And you see it all the time with these manufactured touch guys. In the scripted part, you'll see him get the ball a couple times, and you go, wow. And then in the guts of the game, when you're off script, nobody goes back to it.
Right.
You got to be very disciplined as a coach and a play caller to make sure you keep those guys involved if you think they're going to be relevant. And again, with Avery Williams, that to me is off-season stuff, like you're talking about. With this team, and let's just pretend Dallas Goedert's back for this, with Saquon Barkley, Dallas Goedert, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, yada, yada, yada. Even Jahan Dotson. You got to take one of these guys off the field. In the guts of a close game, you want your best players on the field. You don't want some manufactured touch guy just for a manufactured touch. So that tends to be what happens, especially with good teams. You don't want you want your best players on the field. Now, if it's 40-10, yeah, go knock yourself out, put them out there. But I wouldn't get too worked up about it.
A note on Terrace Marshall is he was a part of the 2019 LSU National Championship team. And for those who follow college football, that was probably one of the best college football teams of all time. A team that featured Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire ran for almost 1,500 yards that year. So he was pretty incredible, or that team was pretty incredible. And Terrace Marshall Jr. was the third wide receiver on that team with 671 yards. And you remember Randy Moss's son was the tight end on that team. So that was a pretty insane team, John. That team also had like Patrick Queen. I mean, that team, Grant Delpit, Kayvon Chason, Kerry Vincent. That team was stacked. Derek Stingley Jr. I mean, that team was insane, that 2019 LSU team. But Terrace Marshall, at least he knows winning, Johnny Mac. Another winner.
Yeah. At the college level, at least. But yeah, Kerry Vincent, former Eagle. Eagles are getting all the.
That's why I named him there.
All the. Yeah, it'd be nice to get Jefferson, but yeah, all right. They got Terrace Marshall.
Yeah, we passed on Jefferson, John. That ship has sailed. See you, brother. It all worked out though because A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith are here now, and they brought us a Super Bowl. So good stuff there, John. Another Eagle news. I saw Nick Scorton was in the Texas A&M edge. Took a picture with Brandon Graham. He was supposed to meet with the Eagles last night, I believe, and then it was supposed to continue today. So there is a picture with him with BG. I'll throw up on the screen right now, but. That dude's big, Johnny Mac. What do you think of Nick Scorton and his fit for the Philadelphia Eagles?
Yeah, I like it. I've mentioned him a couple times. I think
it was reported a little bit ago that he was a top 30 visit, right? So
yeah, it was already reported, but it was just and obviously then it becomes schedules because these guys are going crisscross in the country. A lot of them meeting with 5-10 teams. One guy I saw has got 18 visits. I forget who that was.
Holy moly!
Oh, it was Anthony Belton, who had a top 30 or will have a top 30 visit.
Where do you think he'll be drafted? What round? He's a tough one.
Well, now I'm thinking second.
Yeah, right. Me too. I was thinking third originally, but you're telling me 18 teams. I mean, good night.
18 teams he's had visits with. So
he's a guy that people would like the upside or dream of what they can do during, or with them,
Exactly. So that tells me there's a lot of interest and he's probably going to get pushed up the board. And even, he could be that every year there's one or two surprise first round picks. Typically, he might be that guy.
Yeah.
So many teams are interested in him, but if somebody falls in love, that's all it takes. And, maybe the Eagles' success is resonating, and to a lesser degree, Detroit's success is resonating, and people are starting to figure out, hey, offensive line. Let's try to build. You've already seen Chicago.
Just going for bodies doesn't always work out, though. All right, that's the biggest thing.
No, but I'm saying if you like that, people are starting to catch on that if you build a good offensive line, you got a chance to win a lot of games in this league. And, even teams that have struggled, and I bring up Chicago, and for years, Minnesota has struggled on the interior, and they bring in Ryan Kelly and Will Fries for big money. You're right. I mean, one of the things people criticize the New York Giants, I'm at the forefront of that, and they say, well, their offensive line stinks. They've tried to fix it. That part I disagree with because they've taken a lot of top tier picks. Andrew Thomas being the only one that's worked out, and he got hurt last year. But Evan Neal was a first round pick. Will Hernandez was a second round pick. They tried. But to your point, just because you try doesn't guarantee you're going to do it. But you're not going to fix the problem unless you try. I do know that. And teams like Chicago in Minnesota are now trying, and I can't help think that that is because of the success of the Eagles and the Lions, and people starting to wake up to that. Doesn't mean you could build into the Eagles' offensive line overnight. That's very unlikely.
Yeah, right. Still got to get the evaluation right, but the philosophy at least does seem to be changing. Eagles are in good shape, obviously, in that front. So we will see what happens there. Nick Scorton, though, Johnny Mack is a big boy. I mean, he makes Brandon Graham look small in that picture. I see the people in the chat talking about it. They're a big husky dude, and the reason that what I think about John is you've been consistent on this. You want a bigger dude at edge, and I'm with you. I mean, we have a bunch of undersized guys. Let's get a bigger sized body in there. So maybe Nick Scorton could be a good option for the Eagles. I'm not sure where he's projected right now. I think he's a tweener too, isn't he? A late first, potentially early second guy.
Yeah, he's that kind of guy, and that's my one concern is probably you don't want to take him at 32. So then you can play that game. But sometimes you should, if you like a player, you should just stand pat and take him. And breaking news: the Cleveland Browns are bringing back Joe Flacco.
Nice.
Another hit to Shedeur Sanders.
Another hit to Shedeur and a hit to our boy Kenny Flickett. All right,
Yeah.
Kenny Flickett. Will Kenny Flickett be the starter over there?
No, but it's I can't believe that's the plan. But right now, I mean, yeah, they signed him to 1 year, $4 million. Obviously, they signed Joe to be the backup. They still need a starter.
Well, what are they doing with Pickett?
Well, that's the point. If you get Kirk Cousins or you draft Shedeur Sanders, which I don't think they're going to do, at least early, they might double in and draft him later. Then all of a sudden, he's third string, probably. That's how quickly it.
Kenny, come on, Kenny.
But that, I mean, how much does Joe Flacco have left?
I don't think much.
So, I mean, they could
gave him $4 million. I mean,
they could go to camp and say, all right, Kenny's better prepared. So, but yeah, I Kenny's a backup, and if they're starting him, they're not going to be happy. But I think he could, I think he was a good backup here last year. I've said it I think, Kellen Moore will tell you that. Clean operation, baby.
Yeah. We'll see.
He ran a very clean operation when he got a chance, and he hurt his ribs too, and he played through it. So,
God, you're a Kenny Pickett guy. I can tell you're a Kenny Pickett guy.
No, I just think he did a good job as a backup quarterback.
Yeah, he did. There's no doubt about it. I mean, our team didn't.
And for some reason, because he was, he's a first round pick. He started in Pittsburgh. He wasn't very good, although he won a lot of games. Right. Statistically, wasn't great. People, that's what they do with quarterbacks. If you're not great, you suck. Basically,
that's so true. Speaking of our boy Kellen Moore, I want to go to my boy Anton Baroda. All right, this is our optimistic Aussie, Johnny Mac, but he normally can't watch Bears 365 live because he's in freaking Australia. So he's in here today for his first time live. Anton, appreciate you, brother. Hope you're doing well over there. Hope you're having a good off season. He says Shedeur will end up at pick 9. Mark my words, he's going to.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
Yeah, I think
there's some hype about Las Vegas, which is I believe is 6. I'll tell you what, though.
Brady worked out with Shedeur, so people think that connection is that what's going on there.
Well, Gino's the starter now. That'd be a good spot for him because he doesn't have to start right away. I think that would be a good spot for him, but they have to look long. They have to think about long term as well. But I'll tell you, if he gets by 6 and 9, then you're going to see the fall to Pittsburgh probably. Right. But yeah, 9's a possibility.
I think that's a good fit for him too, because Shedeur's got a pro style. He's a pro style type quarterback. He's not like this uber athletic guy. So I actually like the fit for him with Kellen Moore.
Yeah, I don't mind it, and that's another because he doesn't have to play right away. Like he's not ready to play.
Right.
So I think both of those spots would be good for him. I think Cleveland would be terrible for him because
Cleveland would stink.
They're going to push him on the field right away. most likely. And I think it's pretty clear. There's no way he's going 2 or 3 now. I mean, the Giants can't take him. Can't. I mean, those guys are not quite Walking Dead characters, but, and I'm talking about Dayball and Joe Shane,
Yeah,
but
they're
they're holding on.
They're close.
They're holding on, and if they draft him at 2 or 3, yeah, both. I mean, they're Walking Dead characters. They're done. They're kaput. They can't do that. That's why they signed Russell Wilson.
John, am I wrong in this philosophy? Because this is what I've grown to believe, especially in the modern game where everything is rushed, everything is immediate gratification, everything is immediate results or it's over. I like putting quarterbacks on the bench for a year. I mean, look at what Andy did with Patrick Mahomes. He did it back in the day, obviously, with Donovan McNabb. Hurts unintentionally was on the bench for most of his first year. I just think it's better to let the Jordan Love set the bench for a little bit. Aaron Rodgers set the bench for a little bit back in the day.
I love it.
I think that's the better move. They draft these quarterbacks, throw them into the fire of the NFL game, and if they don't work in the first 6 weeks, they're written off. Like I don't think that's a good approach, especially for a
terrible approach.
So,
but there's so much pressure if you take a quarterback high in the draft to get on. I mean, that's the thing, and there's so much.
Yeah, but if
I always say it's a public-facing industry,
and you're going to draft a quarterback, and you don't have patience to see it through for longer than the first year. I mean, that's a you problem. That's not a quarterback problem or a coach problem.
No, I mean, Kevin O'Connell says it all the time. Organizations fail quarterbacks more than quarterbacks fail organizations.
Right.
I love that quote. So he was a quarterback, obviously, but so he knows, and he's sort of the quarterback guy now in the league. And yeah, he advocates that. But even that team, like we joke about it here. Sam Darnold had a good fucking season. Guess what? If J.J. McCarthy doesn't get hurt, I don't know when, but he would have been on the field last year. I don't know when. It would have been stupid, yes. After Sam had a bad game, they would have put him on the field. It's just the way it works. I'm with you, but it's it's easy to say, but there's so much pressure on these organizations to get these players on the field. And that's why I don't want to take. That's why when there's not a quarterback worthy, I'm not talking about last year, and you even saw it with Caleb Williams, who is enormously talented, and he didn't look great last year. And Jaden Daniels obviously did, and Drake May with a very bad team. But those 3 guys specifically deserved where they were at. And you can debate which one of them should have went 1 and 2. I was a Daniels guy, but Williams is unbelievably gifted, and so is Drake May. Cam Ward ain't them. And forget about Shedeur Sanders and anybody else.
Yeah, no.
So I hate taking quarterbacks like that in the top 10 because there's so much pressure to get them on the field early, and they're not ready to be on the field early.
Cilio had an interesting take on the quarterback, John, yesterday on his show when I was speaking with him. Because of the overall weak nature of this quarterback class, Cilio says to me, if I'm a quarterback needy team, I think I'm getting more value out of Will Howard in the 3rd or 4th round than trying to reach on one of these dudes in round 1. Will Howard had obviously a career at Ohio State. He's a winner. He used because he knows Eagles fans always say that about Jalen Hurts. And he's like, I think there's more value there. And it's hard for me to disagree with him at that because, let's just say you're Kellen Moore. You want to take Will Howard in the 3rd, or would you rather take Shedeur Sanders at 9? I mean, I like Shedeur, so I'd probably go Sanders. But from a sheer value standpoint, building a team, if your team has a lot of needs, I mean, taking Will Howard in the 3rd or 4th makes a lot more sense.
Well, I mean, there's no pressure to play him, so you can sit him, and then you have to trust you have to have a good group in place to teach quarterbacks. So yeah, from the pressure standpoint, I would agree. But there's a significant difference between the talent level of Will Howard and Shedeur Sanders, or even Jalen Milroe as a developmental project.
Right.
They have much higher ceilings. So that's and even Jackson Dart I would throw in that category, and Tyler Shuck. What do we call him?
Shuck, baby. That's right. I was listening to the NFL Network yesterday, John. They were talking about him, and they were saying
The league
Tyler
likes
Shuck.
Yeah, the league likes Tyler Shuck much more than your average draft guide or whoever you like. And we have some great ones here on the show we're lucky enough to talk to. But the league seems to like him a lot better. Now, he's old. That's a concern. And that he's almost, he's 25 and a half.
And the only time I'm interested in an older player is if it's a third, fourth, fifth, sixth, a day 3 pick or a late day 2 pick, and you're just looking for a contributor. And then like the Eagles would make sense.
Quarterback's a position you can play for a long time.
Yeah, that's true.
Good
That's
at
true. I was more talking the Eagles, but you're right. I mean, quarterback would be one that you could make it work. I mean, they have obviously a lot longer of a shelf life. But if you're the Eagles, like people sometimes say, "Oh, don't look at 25-year-olds or 24-year-olds." I agree. I mean, I more prefer the young guys, and the Eagles do too, and that's the right philosophy. But for a team that's trying to go back to the Super Bowl and you need contributors in the draft, maybe you get a 24-year-old who's good for 3 years. That's what you needed them for, like a Milton Williams, and you move on. I don't think that's a bad thought.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it has to do with position too. I mean, I obviously I don't want a 25-year-old running back.
No,
I don't want a 25-year-old cornerback.
What about the 25-year-old DT? That's what I'm thinking.
That's sort of in between. Depends on the prospect, but no, I'd rather always have the younger kid. But I'm just saying, if you have a really good prospect at certain positions, quarterback being one of them, offensive line, specifically those two, I would say, I'll take a 25-year-old if he's really good, because you're going to have a long shelf life. Either way, maybe not as long, but if you get in the modern NFL, if you get 10 years out of a player, I think you're happy. I mean, you could dream about Brandon Graham and Lane Johnson and guys who play forever, but that's not the reality for most players. And yeah, so it depends on a lot of things, but the positions that you need a lot of athleticism, or you take a pounding like running back or linebacker, I don't want a 25.
No, right. I agree with that for sure. John, who is your prediction for who will be the most successful quarterback that's not the top 2 guys, not Cam Ward, not Shedeur? Like, there's a bunch of dudes that are like projected kind of all over the place. Jackson Dart, Milroe, Will Howard, I just named, Riley Leonard. There's a bunch, Tyler Shuck. There's a bunch of dudes in there. Which one of those do you like the best?
Milroe.
Me too.
Because I'm looking at Milroe's. Milroe's got a higher ceiling than Cam Ward, to be honest.
The thing I like about Milroe is that the game is so now, it's so friendly to the dual threat quarterback now. And because you have that athleticism, it gives you more time to, develop while also still being good, because your athleticism gives you an advantage. Back in the day when Tom Brady came in, he couldn't be good until he learned how to read a defense properly. He couldn't.
Well, no quarterback can be good.
No, I know, but when you have your legs, John, you can bail yourself out of positions.
Well, yeah, you can make something out of nothing, but you can't build an offense around that. So, you can make a play. I always go back to Josh Dobbs when he had that little run, and he's just using his athleticism, and everybody's like, "Oh, the Pastronaut, and what a story!" And then, 4th week, 5th week, he stinks because he can't play the position. And, eventually that's going to catch up to you. So Milroe's the classic boomer bust guy, right now he can't play quarterback, but if somebody can teach him how to play quarterback, he's going to be really flipping good. And, that's what you're betting on, especially, for him. I could see somebody coming up and getting him at 32, but if you get him in the second round or the third round,
Yeah, I think second for Milroe.
that's a worthy dart throw. If you're asking me about all the quarterbacks in it, who could play right now, I go Dylan Gabriel.
Yeah, man. Dylan Gabriel's good, but he's a lefty, so that just makes it, you got to flip your offense. I think that's harder to do than people think.
I mean, he just knows how to play the position.
Yeah, he does.
And he's got a lot of size to fit. That's his big issue.
Yeah.
He's also one of those 24-ish, so he's played a lot of college football. That's part of the reason. But I think he's got a chance to be a very good backup for a very long time. But if you're talking about upside, and I go, Cam Ward's by himself. I put him by himself, even though I don't think he's a Caleb Williams level prospect. But in this group, he's clearly the best. But then from the upside, it's Milroe, number 1 for me. And then number 2 is Tyler Shuck. Like, he's got everything you want to be an NFL pocket quarterback.
I think he has a higher floor, not a high ceiling, though.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not saying it's high. I'm saying it's higher.
Yeah, higher than some other guys. All right, yeah. I got you.
Yeah, I don't like any of them. And I probably Kyle McCord, like I like Kyle McCord better than I like Will Howard. And that's interesting because he was at Ohio State and he transferred to Syracuse and set every fucking record they had.
Yeah.
And Will Howard did it, won the national championship. So I'm not, he did a good job as well. But I just like McCord better. But I don't like any of them. Riley Leonard, give me a break.
Yeah, no, I'm not on him.
He's like a poor man's Tim Tebow.
Yeah, seems like a good dude, but I mean,
he's a great leader. That's why
I don't want to see a quarterback in my NFL team. Sorry, Riley, I just don't.
Yeah. He can run. He's kind of goofy looking when he does run, but he's very effective. And I think people assume he's not athletic, but he's really athletic. But he just can't throw the football. Somebody could figure that out. You might have something with him, but I don't know how you teach somebody to throw the football this late in the process.
Right.
But, he's 6'4", he's 220, he's athletic. He can do design runs. He's big, he's physical, but he can't throw it. It's Tim Tebow.
Yeah, he can't. John, how much stock do you think teams put in, like the intangibles of the quarterback position?
A lot. And that's
I more mean like you always say about coaching, people have no idea how much shit a head coach has to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Like they think it's, coach the team, draw up X's and O's and plays. And it's so much more than that. There's media, there's ownership, there's all sorts of things. I kind of view quarterback as the same thing for the players, right? The quarterback has to deal with so much more shit than all of the other players. Do you think teams I'm sure they do, but how much stock do they put in trying to gauge which quarterbacks will handle that the best? Because let's be real, you got to be able to handle that to be successful in the NFL. It's not just about your talent on the field. That's where I think Shedeur is head and shoulders above the rest because he's been listening to this shit since he was a child, So I think he's going to be able to be more prone to handle some of the outside noise.
Well, yeah, I mean, that part of it, sure. Because dealing with the media and dealing with fans and dealing with criticism, right. That's a big part of it. And some people handle that better than others, to say the least.
Yeah, i.e. Jalen Hurts versus Carson Wentz.
Yeah, that's a good example. But yeah, quarterbacks in general, it's a position that demands leadership by its very nature. So you have to be a leader. People have to believe in you. People have to follow you. Let's go back to Parcells and Polian and, how they evaluated quarterbacks. And it was basically, well, you got to hit a certain level from a trait standpoint to play in the NFL. Like we just talked about Ryan Leonard. Like he's got all the leadership. Everybody loves the kid. He's been at Duke. He's smart. Notre Dame. He's smart as hell. But he can't throw the ball. Right. He doesn't have that trait.
Yeah, but your football talent does come first.
So you have to hit that threshold. And then after that threshold comes the leadership part of it, comes the football IQ part of it, the intelligence part of it. You have to know the offense. Remember, if you're a wide receiver, you don't have to know the whole offense. You got to know what you have to do.
Right.
The quarterback has to know what everybody's doing on every play, all 11 guys. So you have to have a high football IQ, and then processing is immense. And that is once you get on the field, once you have that trait, those athletic traits. So the difference between Jamarcus Russell and any other uber talented quarterback is, he just didn't have it from the standpoint of understanding the game, the football IQ, and the processing skills. And especially now with all the Vic Fangio style defenses that try to mask things at the snap, like you got to process things quickly post snap and know exactly what's going on from a coverage standpoint. So that's difficult. And yeah, then that you almost have to be the guy, and that's what Polian always says. You almost have to be the guy who's in there first and leaves last.
Right. No choice. Yeah, you got to. Do they still do the Wonderlic test?
No,
they discontinued it, right? Yeah, I think that was.
But and it's not about that was unfair because I think CJ Stroud had he had a bad virtual thing, but there's a lot of guys who bet like you could be not very smart from a book standpoint or
right,
and be extremely smart in a football perspective. And that's what they're looking for, the football perspective part of it. Not necessarily if you know your American history.
Yeah, right. I thought the Wonderlic was more like a speed test, not a speed test, but what isn't it like a timed thing? It's kind of, but I mean, for a quarterback, I thought it was important just because of the processing that you have to do, in real time in seconds at the line of scrimmage. So I thought
that's why everybody made a big deal out of the testing, the CJ Stroud thing, which was virtual and designed to really hamper down, not problem solving, but really hamper down on football. And he had a really bad score, and everybody made a big deal out of it. And then he showed up, and he's just phenomenal.
Yeah, right. Certainly not the number one indicator, but
no. So I mean, that's something you almost have to see on the field, and analytics people hate it. Scouts will scream it. Sometimes you got. I mean, and that part of it is you. One thing analytics people. One thing I've learned about them, they hate when they can't put a number on something.
Yes,
there's certain things you can't put a number on,
and I don't like that about analytics people. I'm sorry, I do not.
And on the other hand, you can't just ignore data, so it works both ways. And you can't ignore, when they look at traits and they say, well, if you're 6'5" and you have 34-inch arms, you're more likely to succeed being an edge rusher in the NFL. You should pay attention to that.
Yeah, you should pay attention, but that's where you have to be able to draw the fine line because there's a human element, I think, that's can't be left out with the analytics world. That's my knock on analytics. I've never disliked analytics at all. I've always thought it could be, there's obviously good reasons to use it to improve your chances and all those things, but you got to still have the human element. And
Well, of
sometimes I
course.
think they
Some
remove
guys,
that because
you
of
know,
the things you can't quantify.
yeah, I mean, and then there's some guys are, you know, they might have all the talent in the world, but they don't have the work ethic. And some guys, you know, might have the work ethic, but they don't have the talent. And, you know, that's what makes it hard. And, you know, other guys, it's just obvious because they're so gifted. And that's where it was with Jaden Daniels last year. I'm like, this guy's going to be good. I don't know how good, but he's going to be good. And, you know, lo and behold, he's good.
No doubt about it. Good stuff there. Johnny Mac, great opening segment today. Terrace Marshall, the latest Temu signing, is in the building. Johnny Mac was joking about it pre-show. It was pretty funny. But good stuff. So we got a new wide receiver in the building. What will they do? We'll talk about that. Plenty to do here on this Football Friday edition of Birds 365. I will open up in hour number 2. I got a good topic coming up out of the break here, but I will open up in hour number 2 for any questions from the chat as well. Last Friday, our boy Abe put in a chat about the Mount Rushmore. We had a great conversation about that. So if you guys have a conversation or a topic or anything you guys want to ask here in the offseason, we will take that at the end of hour number 2. All right. So thank you all for being here. Don't forget to hit the like button. Likes have been doing pretty good this week. We appreciate everybody watching. John, good viewership, man, for Birds 365 all through the offseason so far. So we do appreciate each and every one of you guys for watching the show, listening, commenting, subscribing, doing everything you guys do. We appreciate that. So we'll be right back here on Birds 365. I got a topic on Zach Bond. What do you think? We haven't talked about Zach Bond in a little bit. We'll do that when we come back here on Birds 365.